think we should go ahead and get started. I see the numbers sort of have remained the same for a little bit. I'm good to everyone. Okay, good morning, everyone. As more folks enter, that's great. And also, please remember we are recording this, so you can watch it or friends can watch it later. Instead of your Netflix Friday night evening, you may want to watch this instead. You never know. Welcome and good morning to our employee webinar. I'm Janet Schulze, your very proud superintendent, and I want to have all of the other folks who are joining me today introduce themselves as well. So I'm going to start with Mr. Hitesh Haria.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hitesh Haria, and I'm the Associate Superintendent of Business Services.
Thank you. And Ms. Tamadong Bradley.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Evelyn Tamadong Bradley. I'm your Assistant Superintendent for HR. Welcome.
And Mr. Molina.
Good morning, Anthony Molina, Assistant Superintendent for Educational Services. Good morning, everyone.
And Ms. Chen.
Good morning. I'm Eileen Chen, Executive Director in Educational Services. Thank you for joining.
And Mr. Velasco.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Matt Velasco, Director of Maintenance, Operations, and Transportation.
And Mr. Oshodi.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Larry Oshodi, Director of Human Resources. Welcome.
Good morning. Dr. Fraser Myers.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Director of Student Services, Dr. Fraser Myers.
Ms. Guardado.
Buenos dias. I'm Sandra Orlado. I'm the EL and DI Coordinator for the district.
Ms. Petrick.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Petrick. I'm the Coordinator of Secondary Instruction for the district.
Ms. Sasser.
Good morning. I'm Shireen Sasser, and I am the Workforce Liaison.
Ms. Preciado.
Good morning. I'm Leticia Preciado, the Parent Family Coordinator in the district. Welcome.
Mr. Melodius.
Hi, good morning. My name is Chris Melodius. I am the District Network Coordinator.
Thank you. And Mr. Alegria.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Nelson Legria, the Supervisor for Site Safety Emergency Preparedness.
And Dr. Cataldi.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Cataldi, the Coordinator for Social Emotional Supports. Thank you for joining.
And Mr. Rocap.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Rocap, Coordinator of Data Reporting and Educational Technology. Welcome.
I also like to call Mr. Rocap our king of all webinars because he hosts and organizes these webinars for us. So a few housekeeping things. Do you want to give them an overview of just where they can do the speaker view, gallery view, and the Q&A?
Sure. If it's working, people are reporting that they don't see a gallery view, but if you're on a device on a computer, you should, in the upper right of your Zoom screen, have a button that says either speaker view or shows a little grid, which is for gallery view. And when you click on that, it will toggle. Even in gallery view, of course, you'll only see the panelists. This is a webinar format, so you won't see other participants. And we find it's easier to organize the Q&A by getting the questions and answers in the Q&A box. So we have just the Q&A box today for this webinar. And we will try to answer some those live or use them to develop our frequently asked questions after this is over. But when we get to the Q&A section, we do rely on what you've posted in the Q&A to try to provide as many answers as possible.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to share my screen and show you the presentation we have today that we're going to do. Use to review. So this morning, again, thank you for joining us and good morning. Really appreciate your time. Thank you for all of the questions folks have sent ahead of time as well too. We're going to give you an overview of some of the main things that are happening in terms of our opening of schools in this distance learning format. We are opening in full distance learning, and we do not know yet a date when we would be able to be in any kind of in-person or hybrid learning. So we are really focused on our full-time distance learning, and that's what the focus of this webinar will be about as well too. I'm going to talk a little bit about the advisory group and the work that we did over the summer. And then Nelson and Matt are going to go over some of the general rules around COVID-19 safe practices and the cleaning and sanitizing that's going on during this time as well. Then I'm going to review some of the distance learning, the new state law, and the components that we have in distance learning in our district. Show you the school schedules. They're the same schedules that you had the link to that you received last week, where there's a link to those. And again, any of the details will be at your individual school sites. And Mr. Molina is going to go over the professional development that we have for our classified and certificated staff, both ongoing now and next week. And then our folks from HR, Team HR, are going to talk to you about cases and scenarios if you find yourself in a situation, which we hope none of you do, but if you find yourself in a situation where you've been exposed to the COVID-19, where a family member in your house has, or you yourself test positive. And then we will have some time for questions and answers from the group of panelists that you just were introduced to earlier today. And again, we will capture the questions and answers and update it to our frequently asked questions document that we have on our website that we are continuing to update. So again, thank you all so much for joining us. Appreciate your time, and know that this is a challenging situation for everyone, and appreciate everyone's dedication to making sure that we continue to fulfill our mission of providing the best possible education for our scholars. So a quick overview, we've been working diligently since we have had the shelter in place originally in March, and then we've been working throughout the summer as well too. And so we've had some guiding principles. Our health and safety of students and staff has always been at the forefront. So as a superintendent, I do meet every week with the County Office of Education, the fellow superintendents in Contra Costa County, and the Contra Costa County Department of Health. And we get a weekly update on the health conditions in Contra Costa County, as well as share some practices. And so that way I can stay up to date on what the conditions are in the county and get any of the latest information as well too. We've had students at the center of our decision making, and it's a time when we have to keep more than ever equity in mind to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all of our students and families. We have to be flexible because the conditions are changing, the communication changes from the state to the county, and just doing our best to keep updating everything in real time. And we have prepared through our advisory committee structure to have schedules that could be for an in-person hybrid, and then and also for the full distance learning. We are, of course, focusing now on full-time distance learning because that is the situation we're in now. And again, we do not have any sort of a time frame yet on when we would be able to have any sort of in-person learning. That will be dependent on the health conditions. So we are focused on full-time distance learning for our students. And again, we've been working with our labor partners throughout, appreciate that cooperation. We've done many presentations to our school board, gotten the approvals that we've needed. And then I'm going to review with you a little bit later the law that was passed in the state, Senate Bill 98, that also impacts the way that we structure our distance learning. Just to give you an illustration of the advisory committee, we had a number of people. So we had the overall advisory committee, and we met weekly from about the end of May, beginning of June, all throughout the entire summer. And then we had a number of subcommittees. So you can see there that the different subcommittees that we had there, staff and family, stakeholder input. So some of the surveys that you saw, the webinars that we held for parents and families came out of ideas from that group as well. Safety, health, and physical spaces, looking at how we can safely arrange both when we're in distance learning and when there's a possibility of in-person hybrid, how we can have everything arranged to meet the safety and health requirements. Special considerations for our students with disabilities. our counseling and social emotional, knowing that now more than ever, we really need to focus on our social emotional supports for our students. And then scheduling and instruction, each level had a committee that worked on the different scheduling and instructional needs for distance learning, and then also, again, when there's a possibility for in-person and hybrid. So the committees were made up of representatives from PEA, CSEA, PASA, CAPS, and also a number of other district staff, depending on their role. And you can see the names of the folks who worked really hard this summer around all of that. We're really incredibly appreciative and grateful for their time, all of the information and guidance, and just fantastic ideas that they brought during this planning. And again, we met every week as a whole committee, and then the subcommittees met at least once a week as well too. So a lot of planning throughout. We had Google Share folders now that we're transferring to be a Google district, and we shared best practices, research articles, schedules from other districts in order to share information. All of this was done, of course, virtually. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Alegria. Nelson is going to go over some of the general COVID-19 safety considerations, whether you're working in person or whether you're out in the world.
Good morning, everyone. So again, we're just going to go over some very basics right now. Contra Costa does have a very high percentage of testing rate right now, positivity rate. So we're trying to lower that. And we're trying to protect ourselves here while we're on site, while you're out doing shopping or whatever you might be doing. When the governor announced the distance learning piece, he also announced a new face covering requirement. And in front of you, you'll see that new face covering requirement. Anyone under 2 years old does not have to wear a face covering. 2 years old to second grade, it is strongly encouraged. If not, the alternative is a face shield for them. Third grade through high school, it is a requirement, and unless they're exempt for whatever reason. And staff as well. All staff will have face coverings, whether they're on site or while they're out doing whatever they might be doing at their site in the classroom, in the hallways, wherever it might be. So make sure we're always wearing our face coverings. We'll go over our face covering, kind of taking care of that in the next slide. But we also want to make sure that we maintain physical distance when we're in our classrooms, when we're in our hallways, even amongst other staff members. We want to make sure we maintain that 6 feet. The 6 feet should translate to everywhere you're at, whether it be in the main office, the hallways, in the break room. Try to maintain that 6 feet. The face mask, physical distance, hand washing, all that stuff works best when it's all working together, not as just an individual piece. If you're physical distancing, that doesn't mean that you don't have to wear a face mask, or if you have a face mask on, that doesn't mean that you can be within that 6 feet. So just make sure you use all that combined so we can reduce the chance of exposure. Next slide, please. Thank you. So again, you're going to hear this a lot, hand washing and wearing a face mask, because these are the key pieces to protecting yourself and making sure you don't have an exposure. Hand washing for at least 20 seconds and doing it frequently. If you don't have the opportunity to hand wash, make sure you're using hand sanitizer that's approved. That's going to be 60% alcohol and up. But hand washing will always be the best option. You want to make sure that you're doing that. Hand sanitizer should be a last resort. When you wear your face mask, there's a lot of do's and don'ts, and you'll see that in front of you as well. The biggest thing is to make sure that the face mask is actually covering your face. That's above your nose and under your chin. I have actually a face mask here. You want to make sure that you have it over your nose and under your chin. It creates a seal. You want to make sure that seal is tight, so that way the germs don't get inside. And we're going to be using face masks frequently. The state also gave us face masks. I know Matt will talk maybe a little about that distribution, but the face masks, make sure you clean them, that they're washed, that they don't have any tears in them, because then you remove that seal and then you lose protection with the face mask. Just make sure you are checking that frequently and that it's tight and it fits you appropriately. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson. I'm going to turn this over to Matt Velasco now to talk about the cleaning and sanitizing that our team is doing during the distance learning as well.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming this morning and listening to some of the processes and procedures that we're putting in place as we are maintaining the safest environments for everyone at our school sites. So the personal protective equipment, which includes face masks and face shields, have been delivered to all sites. The principal secretary has them, and they have a list for all staff members for the sites, and you can sign out for those there when you get to your sites. We have 5 face shields and 5 masks for teachers, and 5 face masks for all other staff. Hand sanitizer is provided in the offices and in each classroom. Please, when the hand sanitizer that you have in the classrooms and the other areas are empty, please don't throw away the bottles, because a lot of the cost in the sanitizer is in the packaging, and we've purchased gallon-sized refills, and you just let the custodian know, and then they'll refill those hand sanitizers for you. As Nelson mentioned, hand sanitizers are your last resort. Hand washing is really a must. That's very important that our staff and our scholars are washing hands frequently throughout the day. We also have the plexiglass shields up in the front offices. Those are designed to have 1 person per shield standing there. We're going to have some tape that we'll put on the floor with lines that are 6 feet apart for physical distancing. Please ensure that only 1 person is there at the shields in the office. As I mentioned, we will have tape across the floors and directional arrows to ensure that our scholars and staff are flowing in one direction so that we can maintain our physical distancing in our hallways. We are currently working on a few videos that will showcase exactly what we're doing at the sites and the cleaning that's going on and things like that. The disinfecting that will be happening, disinfecting will be our #1 priority. And the disinfecting that we will be doing will be on our high-touch surfaces, such as desks, countertops, computer keyboards, the phones, all of our restrooms, light switches, things that are touched frequently throughout the day. We have purchased some incredible equipment that will help that process. They are electrostatic foggers that help the disinfectant stick to those areas, not just spraying on and wiping off. And those will be showcased in the videos. Next slide, please. So here's some examples of those high-touched areas. So you can just kind of look through that slide and see the areas that will be disinfecting. That disinfecting is happening during distance learning. The same that will happen during if we return to hybrid model, we will be doing the same disinfecting. So the schools are safe and healthy for everyone to come into work. Our staff are being certified in COVID cleaning. We have a class that's happening right now. All head custodians will be trained, and then they will in turn train all of the custodians on site, and we will have certified COVID cleaning happening at all sites. We have reminder posters around the school and flyers to remind both scholars and staff to frequently wash hands for the required 20 seconds. So we'll have a really good environment at all of our sites. So we look forward to seeing you all there at the sites. And if there's any questions, please keep the communication going between the custodians, myself, Mr. Rodriguez, or Mr. Trotter, as we will ensure that we will quickly react to any situations that you need in terms of the disinfecting and cleanliness of the schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to point out Mr. Belasco's mask fashion, where you have when you're in an office, a lot of times, I've been finding myself do this too, you end up hanging it by one ear because you have to quickly pull it up at some point when someone comes in, or you're outside in the common area. So again, when we are in our offices and working, when you're in your own individual space, you do not need to wear a mask, but in any of the common areas, on your way to the restroom, when you're walking, if there's more than one person in an office or a classroom or a space, you do have to have that mask on. And so if you have any questions about your personal protective equipment and how you get it, please contact your direct supervisor if you have not received your personal protective equipment. Of course, teachers, yours will be coming next week when you officially start as well for your personal protective equipment. And also, we've put procedures in place where our schools and our offices have very limited opportunities for the public to just come in, right? We want to limit all of those. We have signage up for a number that they can call for making an appointment. We're trying to do the vast majority of our services virtually over the phone, helping parents through a Zoom. We know that that can be a challenge. We're a very social district. We like having people come in, but that just is not the case right now. We have to really limit the people who are coming in and out. And so it's really only those cases that we absolutely have to do something in person, and then very limited, not everyone at once, one person at a time in that office, practicing all social distancing requirements. And again, people have to have a mask in order to come into any of our buildings as well, too, from the public. So I'm going to talk about the law that was passed that frames our distance learning work for all of the schools in California. So Senate Bill 98 was passed over this summer, and it requires by law some minimum standards around distance learning. And so we know that everyone did an amazing job when we were sort of just in a very fast way thrown into this environment of distance learning in March. Now we've had time to prepare. We know that there are more things that we need to do to make sure that our scholars have what they need to be as academically successful as possible. So there's things we've done as a district, and then there's things, of course, that the state has done through the legal process to ensure that. And so the curriculum and what we do has to be aligned to the state standards and substantially equivalent to in-person. So what you would be teaching or experiencing as a student. We are required to do attendance documentation. So we do have daily attendance that will be taken. We have to keep a weekly engagement record and update our parents just like we would during school when we had all of our scholars in person. We have to update our parents on the progress that their child is having. And if any student misses 3 or more days during the distance learning during a week, then we do have to have a plan in place for re-engaging that student. And so, and we also will have grades. So the credit, no credit was a situation for last semester because of the situation that a lot of the districts did in California and having a credit or no credit option. We will have grades now in distance learning. It also requires daily live interaction with certificated employees and their peers, meaning the students' peers. So you will see, if you haven't already seen our schedules, there's a daily live interaction for all of our scholars with their teachers. There's minimal instructional requirements that are in place for each grade level. Kindergarten, 180 minutes, grades 1 through 3, 230, grades 4 through 12, 240, and continuation schools, 180. Those are minimums. And of course, we always strive for more in PUSD. And we have to document, like we would in our regular process, that we have academic supports for students who are slipping below the grade level, accommodations for students who receive special education services, and also integrated ELD. We will continue to provide meal service for students who are eligible for free and reduced meals. So we will continue with our schedule and also added on an additional school for parents for that pickup schedule for meals during this time. We served, kudos to our child nutrition services staff, we've served over 420,000 meals during this time. So almost 500,000 meals so far. And I think that was my last check, which was a week ago, so I know it's higher already. And so kudos to our staff for doing that work and making sure that our families continue to have nutritious meals and food. We know that so many depend on that. All levels of our distance learning will have technology and Chromebooks. As a district, we made significant investments in purchasing more Chromebooks. So we reallocated some bond funds. The state has also given us some funds for this situation. So we've been able to purchase Chromebooks. So we have thousands more Chromebooks that we've purchased. They've been distributed to the school sites, and this week and next week is the whole distribution schedule. Thank you for everyone who's helping with that as well too, for families to check out Chromebooks. We do have families in Pittsburgh. Even though Pittsburgh is a city, there are areas of the city where there is not internet connectivity. So we have worked with our families and our partners. I want to give a thank you to the Rotary International. They've been fundraising to help us with this specific issue of internet connectivity and getting hotspots, and also how families can hook up to Comcast to get a low, I think it's $9.99, under like a $10 a month subscription for internet as well. And again, we also have some hotspots that we're working on checking out to our families as well. We are using Google Classrooms across our district, and so while we will still use Zoom and all the other features, we do have Google Classrooms, and staff will be getting a significant training next week that Mr. Molina will talk about in being familiar with Google Classrooms and Google Suite. And so thank you to all of our tech team who's been helping and working on that, and also in getting the Chromebooks ready. One thing that's really a great feature of the Chromebooks is that, and Mr. Melodius, correct me if I get this wrong, but when we have our Chromebooks out, when we have something new, a security feature or a platform or something new that we need to put on those Chromebooks, we can do that now remotely. So they're set up so that our tech team can push those out, and they don't have to come in and do every individual Chromebook or laptop like we used to before. So our Chromebooks, we don't have to do that with. And then we have social emotional learning included in all of our curriculum. Again, as I mentioned, the social emotional needs of our scholars is incredibly important during this time. I want to thank Dr. Fraser-Myers, Dr. Cataldi, the work of that committee. They really came together, a number of our counselors, and developed some great lessons that our teachers will be able to look at, and our counselors, and be able to do with our students coming into school, especially in the beginning. We have curriculum that will be available throughout, but also in the very beginning, we want to make sure we spend time with our students and families and the social emotional needs, and also getting them familiar with technology. And for everyone who's supporting our scholars in the classroom, it is a different way of teaching, obviously, to do it through distance learning, and really focusing on that depth and connecting and having those relationships and going deep on the knowledge with our students and scholars. And of course, we will have professional development. We've been having professional development and training, and will continue to do so. So thinking about our distance learning, again, the requirement is we will continue to have daily live interaction with the teachers. And one thing that we're doing that is unique in our district is a cohort model. And so this is a model where we've taken the students, and in order understanding and getting great feedback from our teachers that it can be challenging to have, you know, a class of 30 at once all the time in distance learning in order to really engage with the students. So a cohort model is simply taking our classes, our regular classes that we have scheduled, dividing them in half into a cohort A and a cohort B. So you will see in all of our levels, elementary, junior high, and high school, we have a cohort model where the teacher, there'll be times when the entire class is together, and then there's times when just cohort A is getting more of that direct instruction and time with the teacher, while cohort B is engaged in independent learning or other activities, and then flipping so that there's time to go deeper with that. All of our levels have defined schedules for class times. So the examples that you see today may not be the exact times that you have at your school, because the elementary schools might have an earlier start date than you see, or a later start time than you see, not date, time. But but the amount of time that the teachers with the student is defined, and those are determined there in our schedules. and we've maintained the early release Wednesday schedule across all of our divisions. So just like you all have been used to having that early release, our students and families will have that as well too. We'll maintain that in distance learning, so there's time for teacher planning and preparation as well. So these are the links that were sent to you last week, and we can resend them as well too, to look at all the schedules, examples at every single level. We're not going to go through every one today, but I do want to go over the elementary one and just illustrate what that can look like, or what that looks like. So again, this is an example to go through, and what you will see is in the color coding is this is an elementary distance learning schedule for kindergartners through 5th grade. Where you see the green lettering is where all students are together. Where you see the blue is where cohort A is with the teacher. Where you see the red is where cohort B is with the teacher. And where you see the black print is where they're doing the independent practice. So let me just walk you through a day, and so you can see what that would look like. So if we look at Monday, we have cohort A, and let's imagine that I'm a 3rd grade teacher. In real life, I was a 7th grade English teacher, so it is an imagination, but let's say I'm a 3rd grade teacher. So my students, and I have 24 students in my class, and so approximately 12 of them will be in cohort A, and about 12 of them will be in cohort B, right? So every morning I'm going to have all of my students checking in at the same time every morning, and that's what I'm going to do, my morning meeting. I'm going to do a social emotional lesson, and there's some great curriculum that we have developed and that we have vetted and gone through that's available for everyone. And so I will have all of my students in the morning from 8 to 8:30. Again, your elementary school may start at 7:30 or 7:45, and that's fine. So again, I'm going to have my morning meeting. I'm going to have all of my students. I'm going to have them all together. We're going to do some activities together, and I'm going to let them know their schedule for the day so that they are reminded of that too. We're going to do some direct math together, for example, and then cohort B is going to move to independent practice, and I'm going to spend more dedicated time with cohort A so that I can go deeper with those 12 students instead of having all 24 at once on my Zoom with that. There's time built in there for them both to have independent practice on that math. And then we want to make sure that there's recess and movement, and really communicating to our families that, again, that's independent on their own, but as you structure a day, you want to make sure they're getting in there and having some movement as well. Everybody comes back together at a designated time. We go over the English language arts. And then cohort A, again, continues with me for some more dedicated time in my designated ELD time, some longer time for going into that English language arts with cohort A. Then there's a break for lunch, and that's, again, on their own. Again, for our teachers to have that break for lunch as well, too. And then you will see in the afternoon, cohort B comes in, so that I can check in with those other 12 students, see how they're doing, and make sure I have some instruction there. Now, does every teacher in every elementary school have to do math in the morning and English in the afternoon? Absolutely not, right? You may do your English in the morning. You may do your math in the afternoon. You may have a different flow. This is an example for you to see. So students who have special education services, so on a Monday when I'm with my cohort A students and there's independent practice, but also when I'm going deep with cohort A and cohort B is on their own, that's a great time for our students with disabilities to receive their services, their one-on-one services. Maybe they have speech. It's also a time when, just like we would in the regular school year, we will rotate in the physical education, music, and science classes as well. So Tuesday, same concept, but cohort B gets more of that dedicated time with me. On Wednesday, I have them all together. I have my whole 3rd grade classroom in the morning, And then I have prep, the teacher prep, students are doing independent practice. And then we have another check-in in the later morning as well too. And then Thursday is the same schedule as Monday, Friday, the same schedule as Tuesday. So again, the music, PE, and science is rotated in during that independent practice time or that non-third grade classroom teacher time, right? That's when we would then rotate in, just like we do as we develop our schedules. Dual immersion will continue with the adopted model. So that same percentage per grade level of students who receive their instruction in Spanish and instruction in English, that will continue in distance learning. And our students with disabilities will receive their related services and assessments during that independent practice or non-classroom teacher time as well. So that gives us a chance to really schedule that and try and protect that time, which was something that everyone felt strongly about with that. Moving on to our secondary schedules, we are using a quarter system for full semester credit for our high schools. So for the two high schools, for Pittsburgh High School and Black Diamond, all of the students are still taking 6 classes. So our teachers are still teaching 5 classes, but the students are taking only 3 classes at one time. So they will have longer time in quarter 1 with 3 classes, and then they will have their other 3 classes in quarter 2. That way they will receive their full semester credit, but they will be engaging in a longer period of time with 3 teachers at one time. Something that we heard from our high school students and families was that it was overwhelming to keep up with 6 at one time for the high school students, and really supporting everything that they were worried about in terms of getting all of their work in and homework and their grades for their credits. So for the high schools, Black Diamond and Pittsburgh High School, they will be operating on a quarter system. Students will take 3 classes first quarter. They will take 3 classes second quarter. They will receive the semester credit for all 6 classes. Okay, and that will be in a block schedule. Our 3 junior highs, based on their programmatic needs, are making choices of whether they will have a quarter or a semester schedule. So check with your school's principal on those dynamics. So, and everything will be in a block schedule, so there'll be a longer period of time. This will allow for more focused teaching and learning during this distance learning time, fewer teachers and schedules for our families and students to manage. And again, we will maintain our commitment to our dual immersion, our English language learners, and our students with disabilities, because we will balance their classes between the 2 quarters. So if you're taking 2 classes that are dual immersion, we'll make sure that one is in quarter 1 and another one is in quarter 2. And of course, we want to make sure we continue with our integrated ELD practices throughout. And same as the elementary schools, our students with disabilities can receive services during non-cohort time. That's also a time when they can receive services like therapy or other supports with their counselors. So let me show you a couple examples of what that will look like. And again, cohort model still applies, so that there's time with everybody, and then there's time with half of the class, and then designated time with the other half of the class. Here's links to those specific examples, and I'm going to show you them sort of quickly here. Here's a junior high schedule. You will see that there's an advisory time built in the morning for everybody, and that's a time for that social emotional learning to happen. And then you could see on a Monday with cohort A, those half of the students will be taking their first period, their second period, and then their third period. And then there's lunch. And then in the afternoon, the students who are in cohort B will meet with that same teacher, but for a shorter period of time, for first period, second period, and then their third period for their distance learning support. The teachers have their time in the morning, and then their prep period will fall where they would have their regular prep period as well too, in terms of if they have a first through fifth or first through that. So teachers still teach 5 periods at once. On Wednesdays, you can see that that's time when all the students in that class are together. And then again, the afternoon is there for teacher planning and meeting for that time. And then same thing, Thursday mirrors Monday, Tuesday mirrors Friday. And again, when we are able to return to in-person learning, this would be an example of what you would see, where you would have half of the class in your classroom in person at one time, while the other half was working on distance learning. So again, when cohort A is attending their classes here, cohort B will be doing independent work. They may be doing receiving specialized services. They may be meeting with the counselor. They may be meeting with the therapist. That's their time for those types of services. And then when cohort B is in the afternoon, then that's the time when cohort A is doing their independent work and or having their designated services as well too. Here's an example of the 6th period, same type of schedule. And again, the junior highs may have a different start time. This is again to illustrate, but the amount of time per class period is what stays the same across all. So here, this would be same schedule, but instead of periods 1, 2, 3 repeating, you would have 4, 5, 6. So cohort A is here and here with their time, and then they're here and here in the afternoon. And then with cohort B. Here it is for the high school, color-coded in orange and black for our pirates. Cohort A, there's prep and meeting time in the morning for our teachers. We're starting at 8:30, getting used to that late start time that will be coming into law in the next, in 2021. So we'll start there at that time. We've built in some passing times, some little break times in between as well. You can see there's some time, again, at the end of the day for teachers. And it's the same concept. Students are taking 3 periods at once. Each class period is divided into 2. So if you have 30 students, you have 15 when there's cohort A time and 15 when there's cohort B time, and all 30 on Wednesday when you have them both together in the morning. So this will allow more dedicated time with a smaller, fewer number of students with that. And again, cohort A is having that long block of instruction, while cohort B is doing independent practice or receiving specialized services or additional supports. Cohort B then has a approximately half-hour or so check-in with their teacher in the afternoon on that lesson as well too, or their independent practice. Black diamond representing here in our green. We have our black diamond, very same structure. The minutes are shortened to reflect the current schedule that Black Diamond has as well too. Our students with disabilities will attend then 4 days because they're already in their small group, our SDC classes as well. So you can see our instructional aides will be scheduled in to support the students during that time. Our instructional aides may also be asked to pull out students during their non-cohort time. So for example, when cohort A is here, our instructional aides may be working with some students from cohort B, or they may be in supporting the teacher in cohort A. You'll work directly with your school site and or with your teacher if you're an instructional aide who supports students with disabilities. So a lot of information and a lot of new learning. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony Molina to talk about the professional development that we've been doing and are doing and will be doing. So take it over, Mr. Molina.
Good morning. Thank you, Dr. Schulze. Wish I could see all of your faces right now, but I can't. I look forward to seeing them soon. Educational Services has really been working both on focusing on the distance learning component as well as the hybrid. But as Dr. Schulze said in her opening remarks, we are going to be starting in distance learning. And so it's very important for us to wrap our minds around how we're going to connect with our students and be able to have them teach and learn in environments that are very different from their typical starts of school. And so with that said, we have a social emotional learning component. Of course, we have the Google component, the technology, and just to frame that normal teaching still occurs, this is the vehicle in which we'll be delivering that instruction. With that said, a great friend of mine once told me that we have control over nothing except for our thoughts and our attitude. And so with a great attitude, we have moved forward with providing a lot of trainings over the summer and professional development. Of course, these have been optional. So I will go through some work that we've already done to prepare and that your peers and or you have been participating in. We'll move into what we are going to cover with all of our staff on Monday and Tuesday of next week for professional development, and then what you can expect throughout the fall. So first and foremost, we did have Nick Zelfelt, who is the technology director from the County Office of Education, conduct a number of trainings for our teachers. Most of these were beginning Google trainings for teachers and also for our administrators. Those, of course, were done online and via an online platform. And so those were very basic, and they gave throughout the month of July, many of our staff members the opportunity to start to explore on a deeper level the Google platform. In addition to that, we had a number of teachers across all of our school sites, K-12, participate in professional development provided by the Bureau of Education and Research. And that really was important because not only do we have a secondary and an elementary component. Elementary, shout out to you teachers. I know that that was broadcast from East Coast time, so you guys were up, I think around 6 a.m. in the morning, maybe earlier. As secondary teachers, we were fortunate to have, and staff, we were fortunate to have our presenter on West Coast time. But with that said, we also went into more subject specific, specifically at the secondary levels, for math, science, world languages, social studies, ELA, and special education, really strengthening the online instruction for students in those specific areas. With that said, we also had the advisory committee work with the social emotional learning, and that you will see more of on Monday and Tuesday, but we have chosen to use Choose Love as our curriculum. It is online, it is free, it is accessible, and again, we'll be going through more of that in a few minutes, but I do want to say a special shout out to our counselors and staff members, including teachers, who have piloted some of the Choose Love curriculum throughout the summer. They will be assisting with the facilitation of the training on Tuesday for staff members. And so those practitioners have also been having hands-on as well as online professional development for that curriculum. And then we have a number of people throughout the district who have participated throughout the summer in anti-racism webinars. And so currently, right now, all of our administrators, many of our administrators are participating in a 3-part series on culture, practice, and leadership, making sure that our schools have, anti-racism plans. That work is very authentic and rooted in our organization and how it's applicable to us, so that way we can make the change that our community deserves. And then last but not least for summer, well, a couple of things. SPED, we do have SPED training going on. I understand that many of our SPED CEC staff, teachers and aides, psychologists and specialists, behaviorists, SIN program teachers are participating actually today and tomorrow in behavioral training that we'll also be able to share with our staff members. With that said, I'm going to put a pin in this for just a second. Just if any of your colleagues are interested, this webinar is being recorded and will be able for them to view at a later time. In moving forward, we also have this week, the week of welcome. I did see some questions in the question and answers that I haven't been able to get to yet, but some people were asking about additional supports for Wonders in K-5, for example, or Go Math, or maybe National Geographic. Check your emails, and there are links to register. if you either did not get the training last year and or if you need the training for this year and or if you just want to go deeper. We have a number of trainings available for our week of welcome, which is actually currently in progress. And so that is available via Zoom, and we have presenters from Imagine Learning, McGraw-Hill, Go Math, National Geographic. Our early literacy coaches have been doing training. In fact, they're doing a training right now on grade 2 reading foundations, part 1. So take a look at your email. They were sent out to you. And then we also have coming up, dual language immersion collaborations and supports as well. That's tomorrow afternoon. So definitely take a good look at that because you may be interested and willing and should participate. And then of course we have our new teacher orientation that is going to be this Friday. And the new teacher orientation is really built around nuts and bolts, concepts and practices that we use throughout the district. It's pretty practically based for our new teachers. I think we have about 58 new teachers in the district that we're welcoming this year across the spectrum. And that includes people who were hired last year as well, but didn't get the new teacher orientation. So make sure to share that with them if you know any new teachers. HR has already reached out and Ed Services is as well. And now moving on into what probably everybody is really interested in. So thank you to PEA. We were able to sign an MOU with PEA. As many of you know, by signing that MOU, we have moved the October, what was originally scheduled as an October Professional Development Day, into the beginning part of the year before we start with students. That means that the first day with students is pushed back to Thursday. So Monday and Tuesday of next week, we will have professional development. And then Wednesday is the traditional teacher setup day and staff setup day for their work areas. And then that means that October, where we took that professional development day out, that will be a regular teaching and learning day. That will be a day with students. And we'll give you more information, or you can speak with your administrator or email me if you have any clarifying questions on that. So day 1 will be August 10th, and we'll start promptly at 8 a.m. with that professional development. And we will be going over a number of things. We are converting to Gmail, so we will be going over Gmail and how to access and what that looks like migrating from Outlook. We'll also be going over a new app that we're really excited about. It's the Jabber app, and it is connected to our Cisco phone system. You'll be able to download that app on your Android, iPhone, or iPad, and you'll be able to mask your phone number from your cell phone in order to make phone calls, but it will show up with your district number. We heard last spring that a lot of parents and family members were not answering their phones right away when they were getting different phone numbers and or block calls. And so we're hoping that this is going to really support and help with communication. And we'll go over more in detail, obviously, with that. We'll also be going over G Suite, clever logins, and the website, your teacher websites. And so that way you know how all of that is integrated, and clear directions for you will be provided and that you'll be able to provide to your families as well. And then, of course, we will have more in-depth teaching and technology and learning and how those are integrated within Google. We have actually contracted with presenters from the Bureau of Education and Research who are going to be facilitating and supporting our staff, our coordinators of instruction at the secondary and elementary level. So we're really excited, and we're really, eager to get teachers what they need. So we start off on a really, really good note. The second day is going, and that's going to be a very full day. I know that's not many topics, but that's a very full day for you. So we have breaks built in, but be prepared to take notes because there's going to be quite a bit of information shared. And then the second day of PD that we have, we'll be going a little bit more in depth. Thank you, Nelson and Matt, for giving some of our site safety and COVID safety updates, but we will be going a little bit more into detail with that. And so That will be the first part of the morning, and then we'll be going over schedules and SB 98 and attendance. I see a lot of attendance questions, and I know Ms. Chen will probably go over, and or Dr. Schulze, some of this in just a little bit, but we'll be going a little bit more in depth so that way people understand the rationale for the structures, not only ethically, and to give our students and families a good idea of when they need to be on, so we have accountability for our families in terms of what those schedules set us up for, but also because we do have a different accountability starting in distance learning this year, and SB 98 has outlined it. It's a very lengthy document, but we're going to excerpt a number of key points in that so we can go over that with you. So that way you guys fully understand really what the requirements and the attendance will look like. And then last but not least, Dr. Fraser Myers, Dr. Catalde, and some of our wonderful PEA unit members are going to be going over our SEL curriculum and lessons, and really the frame of mind that we have to educate our whole child. With the quarantine and with the still restrictions that we have that have been somewhat lifted since the spring, but still living in a very different age for our young students and with their families, all in very diverse environments, right? And our teachers, I know, and our counselors and psychologists, I know you know this best, but we really want to meet the needs of those students as we are integrating our social emotional, both think of it as both designated, kind of like ELD, we have designated time for SEL lessons, and then we have integrated, right? How do we bring that to our classroom on a daily basis and really focus on the well-being and social emotional needs of our students, as well as how to integrate and think about the anti-racism curriculums and way that we approach our work and reflect on our practices. And then you will have some time with your staff and your principals insight, professional development for the afternoon session of that second day. Moving into the fall, I just want you to know that you will not be alone. First and foremost, as I said, over the spring and summer, huge shout out to all of you and your peers who participated in optional and or mandatory professional developments provided by the county, provided by educational services in the district, and or provided by your sites and your principals. You have a wealth of information and resource in your peers. And so the collaboration, the struggle, but the opportunity is definitely there to learn from each other. But we're also going to be offering professional development series that is ongoing, especially in the areas of technology, where we have a lot of opportunity, right? And it's our base for giving our instruction and our teaching and learning in Google and Zoom, where we will be utilizing those platforms to deliver that instruction and to enhance the instruction that you're giving. And then also in the SEL component with the social emotional learning. And so we'll look at not only providing professional development, well, we're not going to look at, we've already developed professional development for the fall, but we're also going to be looking for champions in those areas. Like I said, many of you guys know this work very, very well and have put a lot of time and effort into researching, practicing, and getting excited to start the school year. I've seen a lot of things on Facebook. I've seen a lot of emails from staff members sharing their virtual classrooms and their Bitmojis and the different resources that they've come up with. So with that said, it's going to be a great fall, and we're really looking forward to supporting the diverse needs of our staff members, some who are beginners, but some who are already practitioners.
Thank you. Yesterday in our All Administrators Day, our All Administrators Retreat that we did virtually and had our day of professional development and time together with all the administrators in the district, we went through some of the same training or a version of the training that you all will receive next week, and it was just outstanding. I can tell you personally, it helped me understand how to access Google and the different tools in Google, and also made me reflect on what I can do as a leader, and the social emotional curriculum as well was just very powerful. And I'm really excited for the experiences that you guys are going to have next week engaging in this professional development. with this. You know, probably like many of you, I was like, what is that going to feel like virtually? How is that going to be? And it was very engaging. You know, the entire day was really relevant and applied. I could directly apply it to myself personally, as well as see how it could apply to the various roles of everyone in our district. So fantastic job, and really excited for you all to go through that professional development, because I know it will help answer some of those things. And a practical point, part of that will also be the logistics of how you take attendance and those things, so that everyone's hearing it at the same time, because I know there's questions on just some of those logistics as well too.
Dr. Schulze, can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
I just want to be specific too. In looking at the attendees, I know we have a lot of instructional aides in the room. We are going to be offering training for instructional aides as well, because we know how important you are in supporting our scholars in the classrooms. So I know HR has sent out information. You'll have a couple of different trainings. One will focus more on the safety and the components of requirements that we must meet, but the others will, that Ed Services is going to be supporting, will focus on what the roles look like in the classroom and what the teachers will be experiencing as well.
Absolutely. So here's an overview of what our classified personnel can expect to have for their professional development next week as well too. And so Ms. Tamadong Bradley, would you like to review this?
Yes, I can jump right in.
Thank you.
Okay, so for our classified staff, we do have our annual professional development day. It is going to be on Zoom. So the first thing I want to say, and welcome all of our classified staff members who are here this morning, is to please double check that your email accounts are up and running and that you're checking your emails, because we will be, in addition to the information we mailed out to your homes, we will also be sending out information by email, specifically the information for our professional development day. We're going to be sending that so you can access all the activities via Zoom. So if for any reason you've not used your email for some time, or you try to log in, maybe it's been about a month or 3 ago and you run into some difficulties, our wonderful staff and the IT department have committed to resolving any of those issues. In fact, the advice that you just call directly, and that is why we put that phone number out there. They've said, please call them and they will help you make sure they reset your password if that's the problem. Whatever it is, we need every single staff member being able to access email. Should we have any other challenges or difficulties, please let us know, or let your supervisor know. We need to just make sure everyone is able to get that information. So come next Tuesday on the 11th, we have a great plan for all of our classified staff. We'll be covering a variety of topics that are timely and important. You see some of them up on the screen here. We're going to look at absence and attendance. We're going to talk about benefits in general. So again, people get a full understanding of what they have as entitlements. I'm going to be talking about leaves in particular, specific to this whole COVID thing in the next slide. We will talk about safety. That is paramount now in everybody's consciousness. We want to look at what specifically we're doing related to our classified staff. Employee self-service is something that we want to encourage more and more of our staff to use, because you have access to a lot of information directly. You don't have to call payroll, you don't have to call HR, you don't have to call anyone. It's all online, courtesy of our County Office of Education, so that you can get your own personal information, including your pay stubs and all of that. I want to encourage, show you how to do it and encourage more of our employees to do it. Then we're going to transition in the afternoon and have you give you time to take care of all of the mandatory trainings that are required. So you're going to have the ability to do your mandatory reported training, your child abuse training, your bloodborne pathogens, sexual harassment training, all of that you'll be able to do that. Now, Mr. Molina talked about the training for all of our aides on the 12th. That is important because we need to have, in addition to what we're going to do with everybody on the 11th, then on the 12th, we have some of our other classified staff, and you see that the positions on the screen here, our aides, our campus resource assistants, our child nutrition assistants, school bus drivers, emergency vehicle drivers. These employees will also have some training on the 12th, in addition to what you get on the 11th. Now, for those trainings, we've asked that you see your supervisors, just like Mr. Molina said. Aid services will be taking care of the training for aides and so on. So you will get that for those specific positions. And we are excited. Please look out for that email that's going to come with information on how to access the training via Zoom. And we look forward to seeing you on the 11th and on the 12th. We can roll into the next slide now.
Yes, thank you. And again, I want to thank our leadership from CSEA from partnering and working with us for this additional professional development time. And again, on Wednesday, you will have the folks that are listed below there will have some training on how to access your Gmail and that transition. And then our aides, you'll be staying on and you will be receiving that professional development like the teachers are around Google Classroom and how to support the students so that you can work in supporting your teachers and students that you work with as well too. So thank you. Moving forward to our employee reporting and notification process. Thank you.
All right. So we have a unique situation with this pandemic. So one of the things that will be instituted as we move forward is the daily self-check. What we're asking is that our employees do a daily self-check really before coming to work. And what you're doing essentially is you're asking yourself this basic questions. Have you been told by your medical professional that you've tested positive for the coronavirus? Have you had direct contact with anyone that has been confirmed as having coronavirus? Have you developed any of the symptoms for the coronavirus? With any of this, if you answer yes to any of these questions, then we're asking you first and foremost to stay home, then notify your supervisor, notify human resources. You have a phone number we put up there 925-473-2359. We're asking that you call that number immediately, as well as notify your supervisor. If any of those happen to you, you need to stay home and just let us know. Human resources will follow up with you and will take necessary steps depending on what your situation is. If it is a direct contact, if you've been tested positive, each one of those scenarios will have different options that we will follow, or if it is that you have developed active COVID-19 symptoms. So we will go ahead and do whatever is necessary in terms of notifications and so on and so forth. The other thing we ask that you do is that you go ahead and also update your absence in frontline. Okay, so we hope that not too many people will have to answer yes to this, but we also know that that's a possibility that that will happen. If that happens, this is the process we want you to follow.
Mr. Ashodi, I'd like to step in very quickly. Some of our, good morning, everybody. This is Evelyn Tamadong Bradley again. A couple of you might be sitting and wondering about the daily self-screening. So when you go through these questions, I just want you to think if you answer yes to any of these questions, pause, call your supervisor, call HR, put your absence in front line, and we will get in touch with you and we will talk with you and walk you through. I don't want you to feel that you're alone. The other questions that may be in your head, because I'm thinking about that as well. What happens to my leave, right? What happens to my leave? Don't worry about the leave. And even if you put sick leave, whatever that may be, we will work together to make sure that the right leave accrual will be accessed. So I don't want you to worry about that. We want you to worry about your health and about your safety. Work with us and your supervisors, and we'll make sure that we'll get those answers for you. Okay? Thank you.
And that's a perfect transition to leaves. Thanks, Mr. Bradley, because there are actually some entitlements made available by the federal government. The Families First Coronavirus Response Act, which we call it FCRA. So if you have any of the human resources people saying FCRA, this is what we're talking about. So there are two parts to this. One is an emergency paid sick leave. And what that does is it provides an additional 10 work days to whatever leaves you already have. There are 6 qualifiers. In other words, there are 6 reasons that the government has provided that will allow you to qualify for these. And these have been posted on our website, the district website, so that you can go through. That is why, again, Mr. Bradley said earlier that if you have to stay home because you've been tested positive or because you have symptoms, you don't have to start kind of worrying about your own sick leaves, because there is this emergency paid sick leave which has been provided. It does have an end date as of now. Right now, the law is that it will end on December 31st. Whether or not that will be extended, we don't know right now, but at least we know all of our employees have access to this extra 10 days for one of the 6 reasons that have been provided. Now, the second part to this FCRA law is the emergency FMLA leave. Actually, perhaps a better name for it is an extended FMLA leave. Prior to this pandemic, employees who meet certain criteria can use up to 12 weeks of FMLA leave to take care of different family and personal situations. When the pandemic hit, they expanded the use of FMLA leave. And what they did, the federal government, they added one more reason to be able to tap into FMLA leave, and that reason is to care for your own child or children whose school or daycare has been closed as a result of COVID-19. So that's one extra reason, in addition to some of the other traditional reasons, which allows you to use FMLA leave. Now, we put in here that some strings are attached to both of those leaves. That's just our usual. We want to be careful. When in doubt, if you need any clarifications, please reach out to us in HR so that we can walk you through and clarify for you. Now, also, we've had situations where we have people who have reached out to us over and above taking leaves. They have asked for accommodations because of COVID-19. They believe they will not be able to adequately perform their duties fully. So there is a process for that in law, which allows for an employer like ourselves to take a look at each situation based on the medical disability and talk about appropriate, reasonable accommodations. For those employees who have reached out to us, we have a process of meeting with them one-on-one, reviewing their situation, and working out appropriate accommodations in each case. Now, like I said, these are for medical disabilities. Has to be a recognized medical disability. For non-medical requests, there are some that we've received that are non-medical. We have a process for that as well, and it will be case by case. Again, the laws surrounding reasonable accommodations is very specific to medical disabilities, but we're willing and we'll always work with all of our employees to explore possibilities so that everyone can perform the duties effectively and efficiently. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Team HR, for that information. And again, as Mr. Oshodi stated, on the website under Human Resources, all of these forms and the longer descriptions of these leaves are located as well too. When in doubt, contact Team HR. Okay. So I know on the minds of everyone is when will students return to school in person? And the honest answer is we simply do not know. It has to be something that we do very cautiously and only when the health conditions allow. And so this is why it's important that that we all are staying up to date with the health conditions, why I have those weekly meetings. And again, it's going to be driven by the guidance and the information from our state and from our local health departments. It is a health decision on that. Right now, what's in place that the governor has done is said that any county who's on the state's monitoring list has to be off of that state's monitoring list for at least 14 days in a row. And so our county, Contra Costa County, is continuing on that state's monitoring list. We do not have a date when the county health department feels they will be off that state monitoring list. They don't know yet because the numbers in Contra Costa County are still rising. So there's a number of indicators that they look at that it determines whether or not a county is on the state's monitoring list. And so as you probably have heard on the news, the Bay Area, almost all the counties in the Bay Area are on that state monitoring list. And so our county would have to be off the list for at least 14 days before we could even consider if we were ready to go back. And again, there's specific health and safety requirements determined by the state and our county that we will have to meet. This is not a situation where one day we're in distance learning, the 14 days have passed, we're off the list, boom, the next day we go to in-person at all. There will have to be a transition plan, right? We are planning, we have a transition plan for what that would look like. We would have a lot of information. We would be meeting with our labor partners. There would be time to transition from full distance learning to in-person learning. It will not happen all at once. It may not happen for all students at once. It may be determined by student group, by student age group. We simply don't have all that information yet, but it would be a time period for transition. We would do webinars and communications very similar to this to update you on what that would look like as well. One of the reasons that the team did such a great and thoughtful job on planning the schedules and the cohort model is it allows for some flexibility in that model would be maintained in terms of having a fewer number of students at the same time. But again, we do not have a date for when we would be able to go to in-person. I know there was some confusion at a board meeting when I said we would do it at least for a month because that was before the governor had made his edict and we didn't have all of the information as it changes. That was simply meant to make sure that people weren't under the impression that if we were off the monitoring list this week, that we would suddenly be going back on. So that September date was only to alleviate anything that if that had happened ahead of time, that we were making that firm commitment for that first month. More than likely, with the way the conditions are now, it will be longer than that. So we don't know. So that date was simply to be a minimum date in case the health conditions had improved before that so that we could plan accordingly. So again, one of the criteria is our county has to be off the state's monitoring list for at least 14 days in a row. in order for school districts to be able to think about what in-person would look like. We will have a transition plan and a transition time period for what that would look like. Right now, we are focusing on how to do full-time distance learning because that's a situation that we're in and that we will be in for a while. And so our efforts are really focused on that, the professional development that you're getting. And when we are able to return to in-person, there's always going to be a distance learning component because of the conditions that we're in. We're not going to be in a situation where all of the students are able to come back. It would first be a hybrid or a slow transition back. So all of this distance learning, professional development is going to really bode well regardless of the situation, because we're always going to have that distance learning component while we are in this health condition. So again, I just want to reiterate, we do not have a timeline for when we would be in person. It will be determined by the state and local health conditions and the health guidance that we get and the directives that we get from our governor and from our county health office as well. The county, our county's Contra Costa, must be off that state's monitoring list for at least 14 consecutive days. We are not off that list, and the county health does not have a time frame for when they feel we will be off of that monitoring list. So every week we go through those updates to see with that. There are additional health and safety requirements that must be in place, not just in our school district, but in our county. So things like availability of testing turnaround time, all of that has to be in place as well too. So there are lots of requirements. So my best advice right now is to really focus on doing the very best that we can for distance learning. And there's going to be a transition time. So let us take care of what that would look like when that time comes. I will constantly be updating you with communications on that, and there will be time to plan when that time comes. But right now, really focus on everything with distance learning. And I anticipate that that is a situation we will be in for a while. So again, I will be updating you as I get weekly updates as well too. So I know we've had some questions. I do want to let you know we have this link. We had a lot of information that we covered today, so I know we won't have as much time for Q&A as we had planned, but we will see if there's a couple ones that have come out strongly that we can answer today that there's been a lot on. We will also take the questions that you've been adding in the Q&A and we will add them to our frequently asked questions document that's on our website as well too. And so when you go to our website, you will see a distance learning link, and that's where all of these pieces are located. So I'm going to stop sharing right now and turn it over here to our panelists and to Mr. Rocap and see if there's a couple of the questions that there were a lot of that we want to address now. And if we're able to.
Sure, I've been copying and pasting some of them into documents so that we can easily do the frequently asked questions. But there have been a number about, and I think Mr. Molina mentioned this, about attendance. What is considered attending? Is it going to be taken just during an advisory? If they only show up for one meeting, is that, you know, still, and they don't do other things during the day, is that still considered attending?
That will be explained on Tuesday's Professional Development Day in detail. The section is under SB 98 and attendance reporting.
Great, thank you. And then a number of questions about, there's lots of information about sanitizing surfaces, but what about ventilation, which is very important, and the HVAC units? Are we dealing with recirculated air? Is it fresh air from outside? What is the status of the filters? Just in general, folks concerned about whether ventilation is adequate.
So I did respond and address those questions as they came up. All of our sites do have recirculated air based upon the temperature of the classroom. Once the classroom reaches a certain temperature, the air is then mechanically cooled So there was another question about the filters that are in the HVAC units, and we've conducted an assessment of those. The filters that are in there are per specifications per each unit, and there's different MERV ratings on those, and I can speak specifically to the about each individual site. As those questions come up, I'd be willing to answer. I'd be more than happy to answer them.
And then just very immediate questions about, are teachers expected to work from school? Is that where they're showing up on Monday? And special education aides, are they able to work from home, or are they expected to work at site?
So our teachers can choose to work remotely. They're welcome to come into the classroom if they need that technology, but they are welcome to work remotely as well. So don't worry about that. And for our instructional aides, check with your supervisor. I do believe for the professional development days, they would be doing that remotely if they are able to, and they have that ability in their homes. But we also, if they need to come into the school site for that, again, all social distancing requirements and masking takes place for that.
And then a teaching and learning scheduling issue when we divide into periods 1 through 3 and then 4 through 6 in the quarters. There will be a 12-week gap before periods 1 through 3 meet again. Are there plans for if there might be learning loss during that time?
So this is a semester schedule, so not for the whole year. So they're taking their semester class. So those periods 1, 2, 3, conceptually, they would be completed during that first quarter. So and then periods 4, 5, 6 would be completed during second quarter. When it's time for second semester, we will be reassessing, monitoring throughout this whole semester. So when it comes time for second semester, it will really depend on the situation that we're in. So we'll be making those determinations during the fall about what second semester will look like, if we'll continue with the quarter system, but again, that's their whole semester's work will be completed in the first quarter, and then their whole semester's work for the other 3 classes will be completed in the second quarter. Now, having said that, we are still going to be offering virtual opportunities for our high schools for what we call evening school for credit recovery. We will also still be looking for teacher volunteers to work outside the day, paid for doing some tutoring outside the workday as well too, for students who need, whether you called it Mastery Center or tutorial, but students who need some extra supports and acceleration as well. We will have some tutoring opportunities too.
And then maybe a final one, unless other folks think there are others to be addressed, is the idea of the sample schedule. People are wondering, they know that you said that they could maybe do math in the morning and English in the afternoon or vice versa. I think there's also a question of, are these really just sample schedules? Like, can they sort of like schedule things any way they would like to with their families, or are these blocks of time sort of set and it's just the content that can change? So what does it mean for it to be a sample schedule, I guess? How flexible is it?
Yeah, so the blocks of time are what's set in terms of the interaction and the instructional minutes and the time that the teacher is having that live instruction and that work with the student. So the latter of how you described it is what it is. So the blocks of times are set. If they choose to do math or English during that block of time, that is determined at their school site. But that block of time is set so that our families know what those schedules would be. And that concept of everyone starting together for that amount of time, then there's a block of time when just cohort A is with their teacher, then there's a smaller block of time when they're back together again, and then a block of time when cohort B is checked in. Those blocks of time are set, and then what happens within that time is where you would work at your school site in terms of, preferences or traditions that you have.
And then I would ask other panelists if they noticed any burning questions that they feel we should try to answer now, and knowing that we have all the questions captured.
Just to reiterate, the technology piece, there are some questions about technology. And so again, as Dr. Schultz said, you know, our Google Chromebooks will be distributed to any student who needs it. It's not going to be just one per family. I know that's one concern. Are all of our students going to have access? Yes, they need to. The other concern was, well, what if we give them all out and we go back into hybrid? We'll cross that bridge when we go to it, but essentially the student will still need it in hybrid if they needed it in distance learning. So we have to provide our students, and we also have to provide our students and families with internet if they don't have access to internet. And so we are working on determining from surveys, past surveys, and putting information out for families to access and to work through our staff to access those Comcast routers or T-Mobile hotspots. And then teachers, of course, as you are connecting with families, you know, forwarding those names to your administrator, and or we'll also give you the link on Monday and Tuesday for who you can contact directly and put the families in contact with, so we can get them that support immediately. Because obviously if they have a device and they don't have internet, then the device may not be any good. So those technology things will be resolved for all of our families and students.
Yep, absolutely. And again, when we're able to go back into hybrid, that student would still need that Chromebook, like Mr. Molina said. So they would be using their same one at school and at home, because we would want to have them have that same set of materials that they keep with them as well. So that checkout will maintain throughout. And again, we are ordering even more. We have enough now to distribute. We are ordering even more. There's a little bit of a delay as everybody's ordering Chromebooks right now. So really thankful that our staff had the foresight to do large orders, and we did that this spring and early summer to get all of the Chromebooks that we needed. And then we will do an additional one as well too, for, you know, having more at the school sites as well. Any other themes or questions?
I just wanted to add one more thing. There were some questions about specific programs. And so of course we'll be giving you guidance and support, like DL, you know, dual language immersion classes and minutes. Of course that will be coming out, but the minutes aren't going to necessarily change. And so Ms. Guadardo will be sending that out to DI teachers. And then, you know, things specific to special education, you know, trainings and guidance and IEP meetings and things like that. All of that will be coming. Again, like Dr. Schultz said, the best way to put it was, let us worry about all of that. We know that you need those answers, but we are here to provide those answers for you. Today in 1.5 hours, we just didn't have the time to go into detail on all of that.
And some requests for specific PD, like for Wonders and Go Math and things that people will be using, needing refreshers on that for if they've used it before, as well as for new folks.
Great. Yeah, we know they have got some great online resources as well too in those curriculums. So that's great as well. Dual immersion, remember, we are keeping the same criteria, that same, if they're that 90-10, 80-20, that balance all remains as well too. All of our meetings are virtual right now. So if you're part of an IEP team meeting, that will be done virtually. And so if you think about, we will still hold IEPs. You know, there are, we certainly have to make sure that we're paying special attention to what distance learning accommodations we need to make as well too. But those IEPs will be held virtually. Any others? Thank you all so much for your time. We are in an unprecedented time, but we are Team Pittsburgh. And if there is a public school system that can get this done, it is ours. We hope that all of our public schools are going to get this done, but we know that we want to be Team Pitt and do it the best in service of our scholars. The commitment that our staff has and our community has to the learning is incredible. And so it's an opportunity. Every challenge is an opportunity to make ourselves better as a system, as individuals, and to provide our mission, which is to educate our young people. I shared with the administrators yesterday that I've been doing a little bit of gardening. I'll call it patio gardening, nothing big, a little bit of gardening this summer. That's something new for me and a nice time to kind of go through and reflect at the end of the day. And as you pull out, for those of you who garden, you know, as you pull out the weeds or the leaves that aren't making it, and then suddenly a day or two later, you have these beautiful blooms that come or fresh things that come as well too. And so that really is thinking of that as a metaphor for how we go about this situation that we're in. It's an opportunity to think about, regardless of distance learning, what are some things that we were doing that weren't working, that is a chance for us to get rid of those and really focus on growing something new and powerful and beautiful so that our scholars can bloom. I know that this is an unusual time, but that doesn't mean it has to be a negative time. It's our role to make it a positive time and to really engage in teaching and learning in support of our scholars. Each one of us plays an integral role in making sure that that happens. And so I thank you today. I thank you in advance. I thank you from the past, because I know how hard everyone has been working. And we know the reason why. Those beautiful children who are going to be waiting for school and an exciting first day of school and an exciting and engaging learning opportunity throughout this time. We know that that relationship with our schools and the services that we provide and the social emotional services we provide are critical to their growth and development. So I can't thank everyone enough. We will have more to come. We gave you a preview of the trainings you'll get next week as well too, where some of these specific questions will be answered as well. Enjoy your day. Again, continue to wish good health on you and your families, and hope that everyone is doing well. Remember to take care of yourselves. We need you in the best possible shape in order to support our scholars. So thank you all. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and look forward to seeing you next week as well during the trainings. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.